Hello, friends. Hello, space wizards with laser swords. Welcome to Sunday Cinematic Service. Uh, so, we normally look at more terrestrial religions, but this time round we're going to a galaxy in a long, long time ago, far, far away. Um, Before we begin, though, uh, Marcus and we were talking on WhatsApp, and one of our, let's say, acquaintances is in this film, Bryony Miller. So we decided when we were watching this, we were going to play Spot Bryony. And the person who lost would have to do the episode doing an impression of Jar Jar Binks the whole time. What actually happened was that I spotted Bryony. I should also point out that we know Bryony from the film that we made, Recovery, which is on Amazon Prime in the US and the UK. Yep, always keep plugging. So, so anyway, I won this, and Marcus lost. And now I don't think we can stand him doing a Jar Jar Binks impression the whole episode. But I think he should at least give us a synopsis of the film, doing a Jar Jar Binks impression. So I'll hand over to you, Marcus.
Some time ago,
Okay, that's enough. But yes, give us a synopsis.
So, within the universe of Star Wars, there's a character called Palpatine, who is like the Grand Emperor of the Sith, who are like the evil wizards in the film series of Star Wars, and he died about 30 years ago before the film started. In the sort of sequel ones, Return of the Jedi, and he has now returned. He's returned from the dead in clone. He's back in clone form, and he's trying to orchestrate a sort of grand battle between the Sith and everyone else. He wants to take over the galaxy using these star-destroying ships, which basically have the ability to destroy a planet on their own. Against him are the rebels. Rey, who is the protagonist of the film, she's a Jedi who the Emperor wants to turn to the dark side. There's the other two characters whose names I can't recall, who are sort of the plucky sidekicks. And there is a sort of Sith bad guy who is wrestling within himself to sort of become good, and he's called Kylo Ren. And the film basically is a series of characters finding a MacGuffin, which goes to another MacGuffin, which goes to another MacGuffin, until they get to the planet where the bad guy is, the Emperor, and then they have a giant space battle, and then the Kylo Ren becomes good at the end, and Rey and him defeat the Emperor. It's a very hard film to actually synopsize, because there is just so much stuff in it, and it just moves so quickly. I think that's basically all you need to know. I mean, probably everyone who's already seen it anyway. So, how do you think I did?
Yeah, no, that was actually a pretty good synopsis. That like you say, it's sort of hard to synopsize, but like I think the fact that you sort of explained it, you've pretty much explained everything in the film, and it sort of highlights how much like extraneous crap is in this movie. Like, there's just so much shit going on.
Yeah, definitely. Like, the film is just...
Go on.
Well, the thing that's interesting about the film is that, well, I suppose, actually, first off, we'll go, what did you think of the film? Did you think it was a good film?
Oh, God, no. This was terrible. So this is the second time I've watched it. So I watched it when it
Third
came out.
for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I watched it originally when it came out in theaters. So for those who don't know, in the before time, there were these places that you could go called theaters, and it had a big screen, and everyone sat in a room and watched a movie. Uh, so I saw it then, and when I first watched it, it just went by so fast that for like an hour afterwards, I was still processing what had happened in the film. Like I was walking around the streets like a zombie, going like, "What the fuck just happened?" Like trying to figure out what happened. This time around, when I watched it, kind of because I'd already processed it, I did find it a bit better. like, um, like I understood a lot more of what was going on and that sort of thing, and it wasn't like just thing like I knew what was coming, so it wasn't just being like slapped in the face with all this shit that was going on. And I kind of also, I suppose, in my head realized like, what's the more important things that you need to pay attention to in the film, and what's the stuff that you can sort of just disregard. But yeah, I say it made it a bit better. So like, it bumped it up from like a 3 to a 4. Like that's, or maybe 3.5. Out of 10.
Is this out of a 10 scale?
Out of a 10. Out of 10. I always go out of 10. What do you think?
Well, so I'll go through sort of the viewings I had. So the first viewing I had was actually on opening day.
No.
It came out the day that I'd finished work for the holidays. I thought this is a great time to watch Star Wars at the cinema, and I went to see it in IMAX as well. Massive, huge experience where screen's so big, and that's really before time stuff. That'll never come back. But and the first time I watched it, I just thought it was hilarious. Like, I think I was the only person in the cinema who found it funny at all, but all the ways where they were trying to sort of shoehorn in backstory so anyone could understand what was going on. All the clearly ADR lines that are there just to try and explain what is going on in sort of one sentence. And I think the last 40 minutes, when it just descends into sort of borderline camp, was just hilarious. So that was the first time. Then about 2 weeks later, so for Christmas I'd gone on holiday to Manchester, and I basically just wanted some alone time, so I've gone with my girlfriend. So I thought, I'll just go to the cinema and see what's on. And it was Boxing Day, and like literally the only film that was on that I had any interest in was Star Wars. So I went to see it again in the cinema 10 days later, and again found it relatively funny. And just a massive, huge mess. So again, I think the second time you see it, you can definitely see more of the sort of scene showing, sort of where everything that's been so badly sort of spliced in and edited in is. And yeah, the third time is this time where it basically just confirmed everything I thought the first 2 times, which is that it's basically an unfinished mess. Because, to get back into some of the backstory behind the film, so Last Jedi was, Force Awakens came out, big hit, but everyone sort of said it was a bit too similar to A New Hope, because it is basically just a sort of soft reboot where it does exactly the same stuff, just slightly sort of different and with sort of minor variations. Then Last Jedi came out, and to try and get some difference from. So basically, what they do in Disney is they sort of listen to the feedback and then try and change it rather than use like one blueprint like they do with Marvel, which I think is a giant mistake looking at what's actually happened with the Star Wars trilogy that they've done. But then the Last Jedi, they made loads of changes where it would sort of subvert expectations. So the Jedi are sort of emaciated in that. Like Luke is sort of instead of a heroic figure, he's sort of a downbeat sort of character. Doesn't really want to do very much. He's sort of he's not heroic at all like he is in the original trilogy. People sort of make mistakes a lot more than they would sort of to underplay that. Rey's backstory is revealed to not be of any sort of significance at all. Her parents nothing in the film. The big bad guy who was set up turns out to be just a pawn of like the Emperor, which isn't revealed then, but it is here. So yeah, massively under cut expectations, and everyone hated that. So they've decided to go back to on here. just basically playing to the fanboys, which again, they didn't even like that either. So a massive failure all around. So that's sort of the backstory of why it's like this. But also, there were huge production issues. So originally it was going to be directed by Colin Trevorrow, who did Jurassic World. Then he made a terrible film. I've not seen it. It might be good, but everyone said it was terrible, called The Book of Henry. So he got fired, and they brought J.J. Abrams back on. And there's basically been loads of behind-the-scenes stuff that's come out, like production stuff, just saying that actors would come in and not know what they were doing that day. They were changing it constantly. I think most visibly in the film is Chewie, who looks up here, who died at one point and is suddenly resurrected. Apparently, the Palpatine wasn't even supposed to be in it until sort of like the last minute, so they sort of rewrote everything to be around him. But what it basically seems to be is a production company that was responding constantly to sort of fan expectation, but then didn't also have the ability to do it in any way that anyone would please anyone, and just basically just no plan at all for what they were going to do with this franchise they spent $4 billion on, which I found pretty astonishing, really. You'd think that you would just sort of sit down, get a plan, and then follow it. But they basically, I mean, it made money, obviously, but not as much as Last Jedi or Force Awakens. The Solo film was a complete disaster. It lost loads of money. So, yeah, it just seems to be a complete mess they've made of everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, yeah, you're right. I think the lack of planning of like the sort of the film and like I've said this before, because I didn't initially like Force Awakens. I have softened on it a bit, but I still think that there's like some big problems in regards to the actual like structure of the film and stuff like that. I don't think like the writing's terrible or anything like that in it. But I think that like having multiple writers on this probably like.
Ooh, do you mean Last Jedi, by the way?
Sorry?
Do you mean that you've softened on Last Jedi?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, because you said Force Awakens was all.
Oh, sorry. I meant, yeah, sorry. I actually like The Force Awakens because basically it was a soft reboot of A New Hope, and it did what it needed to do. Basically, introduce this new world, introduce the new characters, nice sort of comfortable setting, everyone understands what's going on, basic story structure. I think, like, people are like, oh, I hate it, but I think it's like exactly what Disney needed to do at that point. Was basically just very cookie cutter, what people understand, what's important about this is that there's a whole host of new characters that you need to get to know. And then that's it. So I think it's fine. Last Jedi, I've softened on that, but yeah, I think that there's some structural problems with that. But yeah, I agree that like the sort of lack of planning of the trilogy, and not. I suppose the thing is that it didn't need to be like these are the 3 scripts, they're written here. We make these movies, but I think that there should have been, and you kind of see this with the Marvel movies, is that there is this sort of overarching story that they want to tell, and then each of the filmmakers or writers that get the scripts then can sort of do their own thing, but they have to hit certain plot points in it. And I think that's sort of like, it's I was talking to a friend about writing a script, and I was saying to him that, like, you can sort of write a script where, sort of like if you're taking a trip somewhere, you can go from, let's say London to Manchester. You can go from London to Manchester. You can take the most direct route, and that's the way you can do it. Or, you can go and you can stop along the way at different places and that sort of thing. So basically what it should have been is like okay, you know, we want to get from London to Manchester. How you get to Manchester is basically up to you as the writers, um, and the directors. But it doesn't even seem like that was happening at all. And I think that's probably one of the biggest failings of this sort of trilogy.
Yeah, definitely. Like the idea that they've just sort of shoehorned, because you can tell that if what they should have done was build up the fact that Palpatine was, cloned or still alive or something, rather than just drop him in at the last minute. And like, not the last minute, he's in the beginning of this, but like the fact that there's no build up to Palpatine being alive at all is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, and you could see how they could do it in a way like Marvel does. In Force Awakens, maybe it subtly hints at him. Then in Last Jedi, you've got, it is revealed he's sort of still alive, and maybe that ends with Kylo Ren going to see him. And then, yeah, like this one, then it's, you don't need to spend all the time explaining everything and stuff. Like it is ridiculous that they, I think we were joking about it when it played, that they basically, like, the rebels just become suddenly aware that he's there, and they're like, they have to basically do all this exposition. Like, it's like, he must be on Exegol. Oh, the planet of the Sith. Yes, the planet of the Sith that's been there, and it's a big danger and stuff. It's like, why has no one been worried about this before? Why hasn't anything happened? But yeah, if they'd have put that in, basically, if they'd have planned out that Palpatine was going to be the grand villain, then yeah, it would have been a significantly better film, because it wouldn't have had to catch up with the audience all the time.
Yeah, well, I said this, like, when you, like, we're talking about that scene, and, like, specifically, like, Leia says, oh, he's the one that's been pulling the strings all along, and I know it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you've not demonstrated this up until this point. Like, nothing in the previous films has made me believe that Leia, like, was sort of, thinking that Palpatine, like, still existed and that sort of thing. So, yeah. So there is just no sort of, like, setup, but you're right, like, they could have, if they had have said, okay, so the end result of this trilogy is that we want Palpatine to have come back, however that may be, and we want Rey to defeat Palpatine. Right? Great.
Mm.
Now, right, to get us to that point. I think it would have been a lot better, but yeah, it is so piecemeal, and like, let's just like try and do something to sort of make this work and that sort of thing. Like, in reality though, I think that there's no like real reason to have had Palpatine come back at all. Like, I think that, like, you could still have made a quite a good film where it was just Kylo Ren and them trying to take him down, and him, like, I don't think that it's necessarily, but I suppose then they wanted the sort of redemption, because that's what happened at the end of, like, Return of the Jedi. And this is the other thing that people like talk about with one of the major complaints was with Force Awakens was that they rehashed so much stuff from A New Hope, but they do it again in this. Like, they've basically taken the worst of both, like, they've taken the worst criticism from both of them and then just gone, let's do that again. Like, it's an absolute mess of a film. And yeah, like, as I said, it's slightly better on the second viewing, but not much better.
Yeah, and I think like a major problem as well is just the amount of, it's they get. I mean, to be fair, it's not badly paced in that there's so much in it. But yeah, it basically is that the characters will go someplace and they'll find something which is a clue to get to the next planet. And then when they get to the next planet, they instantly get told they have to go somewhere else. So then it's just so quick moving. You never get a settled, because they also introduce new characters in it, which again are there to mainly answer problems that that fanboys had. Like they introduced Kerry Russell's character, who's supposed to be like a love interest for Oscar Isaac, and so one of the problems is that it just skips through just so much stuff. Like they go from one planet to the next, and it'll just be. I mean, it's a proper formula where it'll be. They go to a new planet, they see something strange or something that sets the scenery a little bit. Like it'll be they see they go to like the desert planet, and that's got a festival going on. Then they find the dagger. Then the dagger means that then they have to go to the one where it's Kerry Russell's planet, and they see that stuff's bad there, which is supposed to build up like what the Empire is. But yeah, like they just need to focus more on, like, look at the actual older films. This the episodes 4 through 6. They basically had a formula where it would be, there's 3 planets maximum, and it spends time to actually develop the characters when they're on one of the planets. The second one, Empire Strikes Back, or even the 6th one, where they'll go to Hopper, they'll go to Endor. 40 minutes on the planet, build up sort of everything there, then actually get a battle on there. But this one doesn't do that. It just skips through the planets quickly as they can, and then it ends up with the last 40 minutes being on this totally new planet, which is the dullest, most, like, people complain about like films now ending with sort of CGI messes in dark things to try and hide sort of the effects and stuff. But this takes it to a new level. It's almost like some kind of expressionistic thing where it's just nothing but empty dark backgrounds with there'll be nothing on it but black and some grey to make it so you can see stuff that's going on, and blue from like the light from the sabers or light and stuff. It's like the worst of what people complain about with modern blockbusters ending in complete darkness, really.
Yeah, no, I think that, it was a tough ask, really, for J.J. Abrams, but I don't think he was, like, a filmmaker that was really up to the task anyway. Like, at the bare minimum, I don't think he was the right person to do this. I couldn't tell you who would have been the right person to do this. Actually, just give the next one. I would have just given the next one to Rian Johnson, to be perfectly frank. Like, I would just been like, okay, you're clearly going somewhere with this, so go. Like, do it. Like, and I feel like that probably would have been a better... Well, that definitely would have been a better film. Like, because, like, clearly he had something in mind. Unless, of course, he just, like, absolutely fucking hates J.J. Abrams. And, though, I think at the time it wasn't revealed that J.J. Abrams would be working on the next film, but I think Colin Trevorrow had been fired at that point. Maybe he's just a dick. Maybe he was just like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck this for, like, the next, like... like, not sort of semi-wrap things up and, like, but put in a whole bunch of, like, bits and pieces, that may or may not lead elsewhere. But, I don't know. I think it's, like, it would have been a tough ask for sort of any writer-director. But, yeah, I don't think J.J. Abrams was definitely up to the task at all with this. He's not the right, and I think as well, like, one of his, like, mainstays is nostalgia and that sort of thing. So I wonder how much of it was, like, pandering to fanboys, or was just him pandering to himself, basically, like his sense of nostalgia and stuff like that. Because there's so much in it that is just, like, absolute garbage. Like, that doesn't need to be there, that it is obviously pandering, but, like, I can't imagine anyone would go, yeah, the fans are gonna eat this shit up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to see what they thought were going to do well, really, because if you're Disney and stuff, like, the Last Jedi made money. It made a lot of money and stuff. I don't get why you wouldn't just continue to do it, and you can at least then do outrage marketing and stuff. Like, the thing is that the people who hated that were never going to enjoy it again, because they'll have had the they'll have always thought like that they've been betrayed by the Last Jedi and stuff. So no amount of pandering, I think, could have won them back. And all you're going to do is alienate. I mean, it has alienated people. People talk about how cowardly it is that they've given, Kerry Russell, so people don't think Oscar Isaac's gay in it. Finn. I can't even think of the characters, but they give John Boyega's character a sort of race-appropriate love at Finn. Oh, so he is Finn. Yeah, so they give him like a love interest as well, who I don't know if it's to make him not gay or because they don't want him to end up with Rey. But yeah, that's pretty dodgy as well. They obviously edited out the gay kiss at the end for Russia and China. All they've done is annoy people who may have enjoyed it more, the ones who liked Last Jedi, and they were just chasing an audience that never would come back. And they would have had a perfectly good idea of doing outrage marketing by pushing it further than Last Jedi, and then they could have got people to hate watch it and stuff. It doesn't seem to even make a sort of degree of market sense, never mind artistic sense on Disney's part.
Yeah, I don't see. The thing is I think that like it's a sort of misunderstanding about like sort of how the fanboys work and that sort of thing. In that like so I'm a semi fan of Star Wars. I'm semi fanboy. Like it's a movie like that I have grown up with. Like it's been a movie that has existed in my life. I actually remember when I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, I was sitting somewhere and actually no, I must have been older because it was when the prequels were just coming out, and I was at like a doctor's waiting room, and they had a news thing about like the prequels, like what was the first one, Phantom Menace, and this kid said, "What's Star Wars?" And the mother was like, "I have no idea," and that blew my fucking mind. I was like, "What?" Like, there's people in this world that don't know what Star Wars is? Like, so yeah, like, but it was just something that, like, just, absolutely, like, was my life and that sort of thing. But, like, the thing is that I was at the point where I was like, I'm like, over these films, they're not doing anything, like, good with them. Why do I keep watching them? And then this one came out, and like a couple of days after it came out, I was in the cinema watching it. Like, but there are actual fanboys who it doesn't matter what, like, if it's got Star Wars on it, they're going to see it because that is a part of the canon, and that's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about the canon, and if they don't know what happens in that film, they miss out on part of the canon. So then they can't have their conversations with people about stuff. So they're going to watch it anyway. So like the fact that they tried to pander to them is like the worst mistake you can possibly make. Like, because they're the people who are going to watch the film regardless.
Yeah, you want to expand the tent of people, not just limit it.
Yeah, we could like slip into a whole Democrats thing and their electoral strategy right now, but there are large parallels there. But anyway, so I think that like they sort of shot themselves in the foot by trying to pander to them by putting in so much shit that sort of corrected like stuff from the previous films. Like I was saying when we were watching it, there's a scene where Rey goes and does like a training run thing, and that was clearly like because of everyone saying Rey's a Mary Sue, how can she do all this stuff, blah blah blah. But the thing is that like at this point the horse has already left the barn on that. Like, it's gone. So you may as well just cut that scene out. Just cut it out. It's useless. Put something else in there. Like, put something that explains anything that is going on in this fucking movie. Like, anything. Or or just don't have it at all. Just have a shorter film. Like, it's just it's pure insanity. This film.
Yeah, I think the fanboys enjoy getting annoyed anyway. Like, I think that it's part of, arguing with people about whether it's good or not. That's part of the experience of it anyway. I know obviously they'll say they hate it and want it to be different, but some of it obviously will be something they enjoy and stuff. But I think to get to sort of the religious element, which is ostensibly why we've chosen the film,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that obviously, like, there are now, like, 5 new ones, aren't there? There's the 3, and then there's the 3 trilogy of these ones, and then there's Solo, and the one where it's like a prequel to New Hope, where it ends at the Rogue One. So there are now actually more Star Wars films of this new era than there are directed by George Lucas, who obviously did New Hope and the prequels, and it's other people doing the other 2. But you've obviously got the originals, like the 77 to 83 ones, which are like, his crazy vision where he did a lot of the design and the characters, and it all sprang from his head, even if he didn't direct it. And then you've got the prequels, which are completely his vision, where he's just completely untethered by anything. Even by the time he's finished with Phantom Menace, he's not even tethered by set design. He can literally do everything because it's just behind the green screen. But they've got such a sort of well worked out but crazy sort of vision of like what the Force is, for example. But, the Metachlorians and sort of what it is. It's this kooky religion which he's thought up. And now you've got to the point where it's just whatever the people can just make up, basically, to try and appease this sort of fanboys. So I think that to move on to sort of that as well, it is interesting that like they've made such a mess of it by trying to appeal to everyone, kind of thing. That now you actually have people. Well, I suppose this will be an interesting one to actually go on to now. You have people who now say that the prequels are better because they're the work of a crazy man. At least they're like an auteurist vision. Do you think that the prequels are better than this film?
This film, yes. I would actually watch the oh god, actually no. I'm just remembering like the last time I watched Attack of the Clones, and I was like, actually, that's a tough one. No, I would watch the prequels over this again. Like if someone said to me, like we'll go specifically with Attack of the Clones, which anyone who knows me, it's like the worst one. I think it's the worst one. But I would watch Attack of the Clones over this because at least it sort of has it has a coherent vision. Like as bad as like the CGI is in it and like just shit happening everywhere in it, but like sort of off screen, I suppose you could say. It is, but it does have like a clear vision of like what it wants to be and like what it wants to do in it, and that. Whereas this is just like a fucking mess of like from here to there to da. I think though, like if we're talking about like religion, like let's like get rid of every other Star Wars movie that has occurred. All right, I know. Mm-hmm. Bear with me here, but like look at the way that the like Jedi religion is portrayed in this like film specifically. Like if this was the only thing that you would watch, could you actually explain what the Jedi religion was about?
I would say no. It doesn't seem to make very much sense. It's because you've got like the Sith. Well, even they're not really explained. It's like erased the backstory, really, hasn't it? Like you don't understand that this is supposed to be some like centuries-old battle. It just seems like the Emperor is the sort of big bad guy who can assemble all the other people who are Sith and stuff. Yeah, it doesn't actually explain anything of what the Jedi is or the Sith or anything. It just seems to be like blue lightsaber versus red lightsaber.
Oh, red
Lightning
lightsaber, then lightning later on. Yeah, no, I think that like if you were talking about like they did sort of like put a bunch of stuff in here to sort of explain what was going on, but like from that aspect, like if this was the only Star Wars film I'd seen, and someone said to me like, "What's like the Jedi? What's the deal with Jedi?" I'd be just like, "Well, they seem to be able to do anything. Just they can like, there's no like setup at all for like anything that they do at all. And like if we then bring in the things and we talk about like the whole healing thing, there is actually no setup to that like healing. Like people say, oh well, there's the like snake scene, but the snake scene doesn't. The snake scene just says to you that she has the ability to do this. Like it doesn't sort of indicate that this was something that she at any point before, or it was never indicated that this was in the sort of area of what Jedi could do, like at all. There was just absolutely, it's just like, yeah, she can now like heal people, like I think that like even something as simple as saying like, oh, I just have her say I want to try something and maybe she fails at it or something like that, and then she succeeds, or like something to like explain this thing that she's doing. But it's just like, yeah, no, she can do that, and it's why can she do that? Like how can she do that? Like there's just nothing in there. But it's a sort of, it's the same with it. It's like they also set up like this planet of Exegol, which is the planet of the Sith, when we know that the Sith are the bad guys from sort of context clues because it's all dark and like lightning all the time. But like what is that? Like, and who are all the people in the stadium? Like we get that they're like previous Sith, maybe they're previous Sith, but are they the spirits of previous Sith, or are they actually people, or is the Sith actually a race? Like what are these people? Like who are they? Like it's sort of like, one might say, well, that's not important, but it kind of is. like because then you've got these people who are the ones that are like being cloning fucking Palpatine and shit like that. So it's like, who are these people? Like, and why? Okay, also, why is Palpatine the guy? Like, why is he the guy that they have to like continue with? Like, there's all these sort of questions within this about like what the sort of goals of this like opposite side of this religion, the Jedi religion, that the Jedi are fighting against. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff about them. It's just like it's not explained within the film. Like I think you can like read different books and that explains that, but the point of it is that you shouldn't have to read other books to get that. You should be able to get that in the text.
Yeah, and like, you can give George Lucas as much shit as you want about, the fact that like it's badly written and all that, it's cheesy and it doesn't seem written by a person because everyone talks in a weird way, but at least he knew enough about storytelling to have like a character who didn't understand what was going on, and people had to explain it and stuff. Like, you didn't at least assume that everyone knew everything going in, and that's what's important, kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. There's no explanation why Palpatine is the bad guy. It's only because it does a similar thing actually that what you call it does. The J.J. Abrams' Star Wars film, the second one, where spoiler alert for that for anyone who's not seen it. It turns out the bad guy is Khan. Star Trek, sorry. Yeah, it does. It turns out the bad guy is secretly Khan, but that doesn't make any sense to anyone who's on screen. It's just to trigger the audience to go like, "Oh my god, I've heard of that person," or for the fans and stuff. Because yeah, like half of these characters are sort of new people who weren't around when the first sort of trilogy was. So yeah, they wouldn't know who he was kind of in it. There's no reason why he would be like the big bad guy in it. I'm surprised they didn't just go with Darth Vader, to be honest. I know they could do with the fake, but at least that would have been simpler for the audience to understand. But yeah, it assumes way too much. It doesn't give any explanation for sort of what's going on. And yeah, like they could have at least had like, because like with the healing thing, it doesn't explain like, does it take away some of your life force if you heal someone? Like, because at the end, Kylo brings back Rey, who's died at that point by Palpatine. It's essentially died by killing Palpatine. But there's not a bit where it sort of, what they should have done earlier is she heals Kylo, and then because he's been stabbed, she could have had like a stab wound from that, implying that it took on the aspects of what you've done basically. But she seems perfectly fine, bringing him back and stuff like. That would have at least been like a clue that, you have to, you're giving something up for doing it and stuff. Like, it's just a complete mess where you're supposed to understand it from like the contextual clues of the scene more than any specific thing. But again, I think that is just because it is such a sort of badly made film where they were just improvising stuff moment to moment. Without sort of planning ahead and stuff. Like, yeah, they need a George Lucas type to make this sort of thing where there's no sort of set rules work, or it completely just falls down, really.
Yeah. I do think that, like, you did touch on something, and I like, you said, like, oh, you may as well make Darth Vader the bad guy. And, like, I feel like that would be better. Because, no, seriously, like, if you talk about, like, the previous films and that sort of thing, is that, like, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker was supposed to bring balance to the Force, blah, 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 he's the chosen one, as our good friend Ewan McGregor says all the time. But, like... So he seems to be like someone who is pivotal to this whole story. Like Palpatine, someone who's like sort of brought him up and that sort of thing. He is the sort of Obi-Wan Kenobi, that parallel. Like Palpatine to Anakin Skywalker is Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke Skywalker. That sort of, dynamic. That's pretty much how it sort of should have been. So, like... in theory, they could have been like trying to clone a new, Anakin Skywalker, and like then sort of have him be the sort of big bad at the end. Also, give Hayden Christensen something to do, which like he couldn't have made this film worse, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I see. Like from the previous films, I think that like. Palpatine is the wrong person. Like, he is this sort of big bad that is sort of over, is someone that is like pulling the strings in certain things, but then there is this other aspect of it, and sort of steering back towards the religious aspect of it is that, Anakin Skywalker was the one that was prophesized to be the chosen one and that sort of thing, which is then just kind of dropped at the end. And it's like, well, actually, no, apparently Palpatine's been the chosen one the whole time. Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, and, well, it is strange as well, because, like, from the prequels and the, he's obviously power mad. He's Palpatine and stuff, and he's trying to obviously become the sort of emperor of the universe. But I think that like they've tried to condense like too much. I think as well with making him the bad guy in one film, because it would make more sense if, because sort of the way that the trilogy was going was, it was, that the First Order was sort of a Nazi type organization that was using, terror to take over the universe, and they were sort of dominant. And then you had the rebels. It's a bit of a remake, basically, of the original trilogy thing. But if you'd have had Palpatine pulling the strings the whole time, and then it builds up his empire as it goes on through the trilogy, and then because they sort of build that the empire is getting stronger the First Order, sorry, not the Empire, is getting stronger throughout episodes 7 and 8 and stuff, and then it ends. Episode 8 is, because the thematic stuff as well is that it's supposed to be like in episode 8, it's about how normal people are starting to wake up and come, and anyone could theoretically be sort of a Jedi. That's why you have that bit at the end where it's on the stables of that casino planet, the worst bit of the 8th episode. But what they have to do here is, because he's introduced in this sort of fresh, it basically has to have him do everything in the last 40 minutes to try and take over, and they have to rewrite that he has the ability to conquer planets in sort of one go and stuff. So it's just too compressed a timeline for everything to work. It makes it a bit pointless, everything that they've tried to do in the 7th and 8th one, because basically they might as well just wait around for Palpatine to come back and to do it. And yeah, the whole thing's a mess. It just falls down on the sort of internal contradictions of the fact that they're trying to do like big epic storytelling without planning out the sort of trilogy sort of beforehand. And you give props and all to George Lucas for the originals. They are badly written, and they just spell out what the thematic subtext is. Like, it's funny you were talking about when you watched them. I remember watching the prequels, and I was like, I don't know, 11, I think, when the last one came out, Revenge of the Sith. And the bit where he goes, if you're not with me, you're against me. I thought that was so deep as like an 11-year-old, and thinking about, moral relativism or something. But at least that had a theme or something it was trying to say about politics and the world and stuff. At least the prequels were trying to show how someone could take over from a, they could sort of try and become the dominant force in a democratic republic kind of thing. It just ends with basically, now we instantly have everything that we need to take over, and then it just becomes a big dogfight, essentially. I think the prequels are better films in this, on a thematic point of view as well. They might be worse written and stuff, but at least they have things going on and subtext to them and stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're right. I think potentially, like, one of the bigger problems with the prequels, though, is that is that George Lucas did kind of get bogged down in that in trying to sort of explain how you go from a democratic republic to a fascist empire and that sort of thing. And you know what? He covers it very well. Like he does a sort of good job of it in that, like, he sort of definitely covers all of the bases, like, of how that happens. But it's like at a certain point, it's like you can just kind of like skip parts of, like, George, you don't have to like sort of explain the minutiae of the committee meeting that occurred that created this. Like, it's that's not necessary. Like, you need maybe a bit more sort of broad strokes with it. But yeah, this one is sort of just completely it's too broad, I suppose you could say, in regards to like explaining things. Like, it's just like, yeah, that's not really important. Like, how this, like, where did all the ships come from in the end? Like, no one turned up at the end of the second one to help them, and then Lando goes out. Lando, who was sort of, I suppose, a like famous general, but like no more famous than Leia. Like, when he goes out and asks for help, everyone turns up. When Leia asks for help, no one turns up. But then it's like what made these people sort of change their mind about, like, like, was it that things got so bad that they just decided that they were going to fight back? But yeah, it's or was it more like sort of the existential threat of the final order that sort of push these people into action? Like there's sort of no explanation of like what actually made these people go, okay, like this is the point where we actually fight back. And so, you know, like I think the prequels probably go into too much detail. This just absolutely does not go into enough detail at all. But yeah, I reckon they, you know, you could have just made a really good film with Kylo Ren being the ultimate bad guy that needed to be taken down. Like, just have him be, like, sort of start the film, like, with, like, the sort of rapid expansion of the First Order after the defeat of the rebels, or the resistance at the end of the last one. There's rapid expansion of the First Order, things going bad, blah blah blah, need to take down Kylo Ren. That's your film. That's it. Like, it's, you know, like, you can't, like, there's...
Well, I've just been thinking while you've been talking about how I might do the trilogy if I was to do it, sort of to address these things. Now, I was just thinking to stick with me for a little bit about if you wanted to still do the Disney thing where you're basically you're basically remaking but subverting the original trilogy. What I would do if I was doing it would be I'd do Force Awakens basically as it is, but I would have Snoke as like Peter Cushing's character and have him die at the end of the first one, and then I would have Kylo Ren sort of go off at the end to another planet that's a bit mysterious. Then I would have the one that's supposed to be Empire Strikes Back. Kylo Ren's on the Sith planet, and then he is being taught by Palpatine about the sort of Sith and stuff, and it's about his push-pull about... So I would sort of subvert the Empire Strikes Back where it's Luke being taught about the Jedi, and have basically the exact same thing, but with Kylo Ren being taught by Palpatine. And then it would sort of be about you could have like the First Order's rudderless, and you know the overacting guy who's like a spy in this one. He could be the villain of that one, and it's about like you could get more into sort of like life at, you know, after the Empire collapsed in the original trilogy, and they could sort of be making headway to get sort of more democracy in there. So a bit of what the prequels are doing, but hopefully not as much of a boring way and stuff. And you could even have the Luke stuff with Rey, and then you could have Kylo Ren go to the Luke planet to try and... So you could have, like, again, a subversion of Empire Strikes Back where Luke goes to fight Vader, and then maybe he could kill, like, Luke at the end or something, and then he's got the internal thing about the sort of good bad thing, and then end the middle one with, you know, Palpatine's got all the Star Destroyer things, and that's sort of your cliffhanger that he can destroy the Empire, and he's going to make a last push to, you know, like an epic battle between, you know, he can destroy the universe and the rebels are a bit more powerful or something. Then you set up this where you don't have to go into everything. You can, you know, you from the beginning, you know what the stakes are and everything. It's not all in the last act. I think that would work a lot better than what they do here, where they're trying to shoehorn in sort of essentially... It's just too much. Every act in this one could be its own film because they cover so much territory. And yeah, it just ends with a confused final act, which descends into camp because everyone's so powerful and it's just so ridiculous. If you think that would... Did you start to see what I'm trying to get at, how you could do it better if you planned it a bit more with Palpatine in mind?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I would say like my only change would be like I would keep Snoke. At least for the second film, and actually have Kylo's like mistreatment at the hands of Snoke as to like why he sort of seeks out Palpatine. Like, you know, like have it sort of maybe, you know, set up that he starts to hear like Palpatine's voice and stuff like that, and so he seeks him out to become more powerful to destroy Snoke and blah 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 blah. And that's his sort of that brings like sort of Palpatine into it, and then he destroys Snoke, and then like sort of comes to the realization that he's been sort of manipulated this whole time by Palpatine, who is basically the ultimate bad guy. There's your, and then there's your third movie, so yeah. So and then you could it would be a lot better for the sort of like redemption arc as well. So you then have Rey and Kylo Ren both sort of working towards the same goal, which is to take down Snoke, and then sort of maybe have them towards the end bond over that, like taking down Snoke, and then realizing that they have a much bigger enemy that they have to destroy in Palpatine, and then sort of take it from there. Like it's not like a bit of planning beforehand. It's not a difficult sort of story to map out. Like even with all the elements that they have in there. But like even if it was just this film, like I still think that you could like easily make a story that was just Rey against Kylo, and Rey basically, you could even do the end of you could do a similar thing with the end of thing you don't necessarily have to have someone that's more evil than Kylo for him to have his own redemption arc. Like, it could just be that he finally understands that this is not who he is. Because that's one of the things that they sort of set up in the second one, is that, his fight isn't, like most of the other, Jedi before him. And that it's not his fight is not to resist the dark side. His thing is that he has to resist the light side. That's why he ends up killing Han in the film, because that's what he thought he needed to do, to basically destroy his past, and to make himself the ultimate Sith. And then the film is him sort of, then it's him resisting, going back to the light side, and so, yeah, you could have that be continue his internal conflict of him, wanting to be on the side of the dark side, but, constantly being drawn back by his family and that sort of thing, and that to the light side, and you could have a redemption of him sort of realizing that he is he's not the person he wants to be, and then basically him trying to dismantle this huge structure that he has built up, which is the First Order. Easy movie.
Yeah, well, we've probably gone for an hour now, and I think we've got into everything that's so bad about it, and some of the sort of religious. I think that the thing that the finale about the sort of religious stuff is, as you said, just not explained or anything, or no. And it's kind of funny because obviously there's that joke where it's true, but it's funny that there's more people in Britain, when they do the census thing, list Jedi than any other non-official religion. So it's a big part of people have invested so much in the mythology of these films and sort of what they're supposed to represent and all this. So, yeah, it just treats it like dog shit basically. It's just whatever's necessary for the scene. It just can do that, So yeah, it's funny that for something that's supposed to be so reverent and they talk all the time how they're going to do right by the franchise and stuff. They've basically destroyed the things that actually made people enjoy the mythos of the Force sort of in the film. So I suppose I'll end on that. Do you have anything else to add to the?
Well, yeah, no, I was going to say, like, yeah, you're right, because like this film is like the old, like the pinnacle. Like this is the ultimate like meeting of the two sides of this religion, and then it's just like completely ignored just to get this like movie like going and that sort of thing. So I think it actually does a disservice by not really explaining a lot in the film about like what is going on, because it is this like ultimate showdown. This is the end. This is what everything has been leading to, and then it's just like no, there's no point in like. There's no actual explanation of like what is going on, why this is important, and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's my last thought.
Yeah, I think just a final call out to the Star Wars fans. Like this is what capitalism does. It takes your favorite things and it ruins them for mass consumption. So just as the we've talked about how the incels are the prime for something like socialism. So the Star Wars fans, see what your god of capital has done to your to George Lucas's as child, his franchise. It's destroyed it for mass consumption.
That's a perfect place to end.